So we're going to change the wheel bearing on a motocross. This is a Honda CRF 150, and there's more videos out on YouTube on how to do this, but the only reason I want to show you is I'm going to do a little trick to pop the bearing out. Sometimes you have a hard time pulling the bearing out. The tooth bearings are in the wheel, and there's a sleeve in between. Let's pull these things out here. There's a sleeve in between the wheel, and once you take the seals out, sometimes you have a hard time pulling the bearings out, so I'll show you a little trick how to do that. So let's first get the seals out. Seals out this way. Okay, so the seals are out, and you could try to punch the far bearing out, but again, there's a sleeve inside and it's very tough. So what I like to do is find a socket that fits pretty well, as tight as it can inside the wheel. And this one here is a 10mm 1/4 inch. And what I'll do is I'll take my welder and I'll just tack weld along the inner bearing sleeve here, and that way there I'll be able to punch it out from the back. So let's do that. All right. So what I'm going to do is just going to tack weld a couple of blobs, if you will, around the inner bearing sleeve here. There you go. Don't worry if the fire catches in this thing. It's only the bearing protection of the seal is on fire. But I think we did a good job here. So that's all it is tacked all around here. So now if I put this socket through, it'll stop right where the weld is. So I'm going to just back up here and put it out on the vise. So now I should be able to just tap that bearing out. Look at the back here. What we ended up doing is, there's the sleeve I was talking about. We popped the bearing. So then the other one's going to be easier to pull out now because the sleeve is out. Put it here. And this one here we're going to need a bigger socket. So I found a bigger socket. It's going to help me punch the last bearing out. And you notice I'm using a rubber mallet. The only reason is I don't want to screw up all my extensions here, which is hitting with a steel hammer. So there you go, popped out. Now the interesting thing here is that the back end of the bearing, the seal is gone. So there was none. So from the factory, when you buy these aftermarket bearings, both the seals are on, but not the factory ones. Kind of interesting. Now there's no water inside, or that tunnel isn't filled with grease, but needless to say, there's no inner seal. So we're going to keep these seals on, and I sometimes take the seals out and repack them because I always find the factory, or not the factory, but these olive balls don't look like they have enough grease in them. But for the price of these things, it's 15 bucks. I'm not going to get too carried away here. We're going to reassemble this. So to help put these bearings back in, we could do a few things. I have a press. I could press them in. Be careful if you punch them in with a hammer. Some people put bigger sockets to tap them in, but be careful on that, because if you punch on the inner bearing, you will cause damage to the bearing. So be careful. Heating it up is probably an option. I wouldn't want to do that. These are aluminum housings. I wouldn't do that. I'd rather cool these bearings down. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw these bearings in the freezer for 20 minutes or half an hour, and they're going to contract a bit, and then we're going to place them inside the house. So I cleaned the hub up with a little bit of a brake cleaner. It was dirty. Like I said, I got the bearings in the freezer there. They've been there for about 20 minutes. Some people like to heat up the the hub with the torch. I don't like doing that, they're aluminum, but I will heat it up a bit with this hair blower here, or not hair blower, but this hair dryer, whatever the hell it's called. But anyways, I'm going to heat it up, and hopefully it'll expand a bit, the amount of the bearing will fit in a lot easier. So I heated this thing up a bit, got the bearing, it's cold, so it should be contracted a bit. I still have a socket here that I just punch it in here slowly. There you have it. It's in there now, nice. And let's do the other side. So before you put the other bearing in, obviously you don't want to forget the sleeve, because if you forget that, you're in trouble. So sock it on this. We're done. Now let's put the seals on both ends. So before I put the other seal back in here, I want to put a little bit of grease in here. And one of the reasons I want to do that is that if any kind of moisture or water is going to get in here, this grease is going to make it that much more difficult to get to the bearing. So I don't think it's all that bad idea to put some grease here in the back of the seal. There it is. It's done. We're ready to install. But before we install this tire back up here, or this wheel back up, we got to change the tire. So we're going to do that next. So pretty easy to change the bearing, but if you're ever changing a bearing, I just want to go over that little tip here on welding the inner race of the bearing. If you're ever pulling a bearing out of a motorcycle wheel or even an ATV wheel, often they'll have two bearings and with a sleeve in the middle. Very, very, very hard to pull out or punch out. I busted punches and screwdriver trying to do it. The simplest and easiest trick, hopefully you have a welder, just to tack weld a couple of tacks along the inner race. So obviously this socket here can easily go through this bearing, but with the tacks it can't, and it allows you the opportunity to punch that bearing out. And once it's popped out, the sleeve will come out, then you can flip your wheel and pop the other bearing out very easily. So a little trick, very easy to do, and saves you a lot of headaches. So that's simple as that. So hope you enjoyed the video.